welcome to our channel. Hey guys, tonight we're opening the medicine cabinet of history and swallowing the jagged little pill that was American Halloween in the early 1980s, a time when the only thing scarier than a haunted house was your mom. Reading the news that's right tonight, we'll drift off into the uneasy, candy-coated, panic-inducing tale of the Tylenol murders, the true crime saga that melted a nation's brain and convinced every parent in America that a fun-sized Snickers was one bad vibe away from chemical warfare. Before we pop the safety seal on this absurd, deeply paranoid chapter of the past, please take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you now. Dim the lights, fire up a fan for that sweet, nostalgic white noise and settle in. Make sure your cozy blanket, fort-weighted blanket or just the crushing weight of modern adulthood, maybe keep one eye on your nightstand just in case your vitamins are feeling extra vintage. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to have your entire childhood hijacked by an over-the-counter medication? Did your parents ever confiscate your Halloween candy and interrogate it under a desk lamp? Have you ever tried explaining to a Gen Z kid why your mom made you throw out your entire trick-or-treat bag because she was pretty sure she saw something on 60 Minutes? Were you ever secretly suspicious that the little packet of Smarties was actually a science experiment? Before the Tylenol panic, Halloween was a sugar-fueled free-for-all pillowcases bursting with candy, parents vaguely aware of your location and the only thing you worried about was getting raisins from the weird neighbor. But in 1982, this innocent chaos was about to get a total makeover, courtesy of a handful of mysterious pills. Let's set the scene. It's a crisp autumn evening in suburbia. You're 10 years old, wearing a costume made entirely out of vinyl and hope. The mask is thin, held on by a single elastic band that's just waiting to snap and take out your left eye. Your biggest fear is that your Darth Vader voice isn't intimidating enough to score you 2 Snickers instead of 1. Your parents are at home enjoying the one night of the year when you can legally disappear for 3 hours. They're not worried. They assume you're somewhere between Mrs. Henderson's, jack-o'-lantern and the neighbor's haunted garage, which was mostly just a lawn mower draped in cobwebs. Halloween in the pre-panic era is magical, if by magical you mean lightly supervised chaos with a side of hypothermia. You're out with a gang of kids from your block. No cell phones, no GPS, just a vague plan to hit every house with the porch light on. If someone had a flashlight it was because their mom insisted otherwise. You navigated by streetlight and the primal urge for peanut butter cups. You'd swap war stories about the houses that gave out king-size bars or, on rare occasions, cans of soda, the kind of luxury that elevated you from mere mortal to playground legend. The candy economy is thriving. Everyone knows the conversion rates: 3 Tootsie Rolls for a single Reese's, 2 Pixie Sticks for a mini Milky Way and exactly 0 value assigned to the aforementioned raisins. There's a complicated, unspoken barter system that would make Wall Street quiver. You've got strategies too. The costume that gets the most candy is whatever makes you look vaguely pitiful. Oh, you're a sad little clown. Take an extra caramel by the end of the night. You're hauling a sack heavy enough to throw your back out before puberty. Let's not forget the legendary freedom. For 3 glorious hours, the world was yours. No parents trailing behind you at a respectful 20 paces, no group texts blowing up with, "Are you safe?" Just you, your friends, and the chill in the air that made you feel like you could go anywhere. Sure, you might get a scolding if you came home after the streetlights switched on, but mostly you just staggered in sticky, exhausted and covered in bits of plastic and leaves. And yet, for all the excitement, there was a sense of trust floating around, like the smell of burnt pumpkin. People actually handed out homemade popcorn balls, caramel, apples wrapped in wax paper and cookies that came from someone's actual kitchen. Your mom would examine your loot for suspicious items, which meant anything homemade by someone she didn't know personally. But let's be honest, if the cookie looked good, you were eating it, no matter what safety warnings did exist. but they were more of a running joke than a rule. The old razor blade in the Apple story made its rounds every year, but nobody actually knew anyone who'd found one. It was just the stuff of urban legend. A good excuse to avoid eating apples which, let's face it, nobody wanted anyway. Trick-or-treating was a marathon, not a sprint. You'd loop around the same block multiple times, switching up your mask or hat, hoping the people who lived there were too distracted by the great pumpkin, Charlie Brown, to recognize you as the same kid who just left. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes you got called out and forced into candy exile. Even then the shame was worth it if you scored an extra Kit Kat. After the grand adventure, the real fun began, dumping your loot on the living room floor, sorting it by type, color or, if you were a young economist, by perceived value. Parents might inspect your candy. But everyone knew the real reason: they wanted first dibs on the good stuff. It was a sacred ritual, this after-dark sugar orgy, with the occasional shakedown by a little sibling or a suspiciously enthusiastic parent. But all of this, every sweet, sticky moment, was about to change. With the Tylenol murders, the gentle haze of suburban trust began to unravel. The news cycle turned a holiday built on mischief and sugar into a case study in mass paranoia. The world you knew, with its wild candy trades and sticky popcorn balls, was replaced almost overnight by plastic-wrapped anxiety and parents treating every milk dud like a ticking time bomb. So take a moment to remember the Halloweens before the panic, before the safety lectures and X-rayed candy, before the grown-ups started treating trick-or-treating like a live episode of CSI, because for one last breath, it really was just about the candy, the chaos, and the cold October air. You wake up with a headache, stub your toe, get your feelings hurt. There's Tylenol for that. The 1980s were peak over-the-counter optimism. If it came in a bottle and promised relief, you probably had it in your house, in your purse and in the glove compartment of your Chrysler Lyron. Let's talk about just how deep the Tylenol romance ran. This was an era before wellness influences and holistic sleep sprays. Your choices for pain relief were aspirin, which your grandma swore would rot your stomach, whatever dubious ointment your neighbor recommended, or Tylenol, which arrived on the scene like the friendly, reliable boyfriend your parents always wanted you to date. Tylenol wasn't just medicine. It was the go-to cure for everything: headaches, fevers, minor aches, and that mysterious soreness you got from simply being over 30, pop a Tylenol. Life is pain, but at least it comes in easy-to-swallow capsules. Tylenol had achieved near mythical status in the average American home for a generation who'd survived disco, the gas crisis, and a lifetime of Wonder Bread. The idea that you could just take a pill and instantly feel better was basically science fiction. With a child-proof cap, moms handed it out like breath mints. Dads kept a bottle in the garage. You probably had a half-empty one on your desk at work that you couldn't remember buying. It was everywhere, always there to whisper, "Hey, you're fine, just a little acetaminophen and you'll be good as new." And let's not overlook the branding. Tylenol, with its red and white packaging and big blocky letters, was the visual equivalent of a reassuring pat on the back. It looked safe, dependable, a little bit boring and completely unthreatening. Like the pharmaceutical version of mashed potatoes. It was advertised as the pain reliever hospitals use most, which, in the days before Google and rampant medical skepticism, was all the authority anyone needed if hospitals used it. That was good enough for everyone, from your hypochondriac aunt to your favorite school nurse. Of course, the 1980s were also an age where self-medication was basically an Olympic sport. Feeling stressed? Have a Tylenol. Woke up cranky? Try a Tylenol hungover from last night's company party. The bottle's already open. There was a certain naive faith in the power of the pill. Take 2 and call me in the morning, or don't call at all, because you'll be fixed by then. The only real worry was accidentally dropping one between the couch cushions and finding it 6 months later looking like a fossilized marshmallow. The love affair went deeper than marketing and medicine cabinets. Tylenol became a quiet part of American rituals. It was in the same league as orange juice, Vicks, vapor rub and whatever mystery liquid your school nurse kept in a brown bottle. There were TV commercials featuring chipper actors bouncing back from life's indignities, a jammed finger, a stubbed toe, a migraine from talking to your in-laws, all solved by the magic of the tablet. The only thing missing was a jingle about how Tylenol could mend your broken heart. Give it time. And then there was the matter of trust. Tylenol wasn't flashy or mysterious. It didn't come in a strange glass vial or require you to sign a waiver. There was no drama, no side effects. That sounded like a horror movie. Just take as directed and get on with your day. It was as much a symbol of modern convenience as microwavable popcorn and drive-through banking. The irony, of course, is that this sense of trust, the total faith in a tiny plastic bottle, was exactly what made the Tylenol murders so terrifying. If something as ordinary and beloved as Tylenol could be turned against you, what was safe anymore? For most people, the idea that an anonymous stranger could tamper with a symbol of everyday comfort was like discovering your teddy bear had secretly been working for the KGB. So, yes, America's love affair with Tylenol was deep and utterly unconditional. It was a relationship built on trust, convenience and a collective need to get through the day with minimal suffering. But, as we're about to see, sometimes love makes you vulnerable, and in 1982, that trust would be shattered in ways nobody could have predicted, all because of a little red and white bottle that lived quietly in every American home. Suburbia in the early 80s was a fortress of routine. The grass was mowed, the neighbors were polite, and Halloween meant safe streets packed with unsupervised kids in plastic masks. But beneath the tranquil lawns lurked a new kind of horror, one you couldn't keep out with a fence. You wake up in your split-level home, nestled somewhere between Maple Drive and Pleasant Lane, where everyone waves when they drive by, even if they secretly hate each other's hedges. The air smells like fresh mulch, charcoal and faint tension. Your biggest concern used to be whether Jerry, from 3 doors down, would invite you to his pool party. Now you're watching the evening news like it's a psychological thriller because someone just said Tylenol with the same tone you'd reserve for active volcano. Suburbia in 1982 was a well-oiled machine. People lived in color-coordinated bubbles of comfort. You had your clear crew, your potluck rotation, your homeowners association president who took things a little too seriously. Everything from your morning coffee to your nightly viewing of Cheers followed an unspoken script. Halloween was a key piece of this suburban choreography. The porch lights came on at exactly 6 p.m., the kids flooded the sidewalks and the houses competed to see who could hand out the most diabetes in under 2 hours. It was idyllic if your idea of idyllic includes heavy lawn care, competition and a complete dependence on Jell-O molds. But under the surface of all this order and seasonal joy was a growing unease. When the Tylenol murders hit the news, it didn't just interrupt your regularly scheduled programming, it shattered the entire illusion of safety. The suburbs weren't supposed to have serial poisoners. That was city stuff, big, scary, anonymous city stuff. Here you had block parties. You knew your mailman by name. The only thing toxic was the local PTA meeting. Still, the fear snuck in. It started with whispers, "Did you hear about the lady in Chicago?" Then escalated into full-blown anxiety with just a few grainy TV reports. Suddenly, the safest place in the world started feeling like a trap. The same shelves at the grocery store where you once lovingly selected snacks now looked like a pharmaceutical minefield. You couldn't unsee it. The little red and white bottle on your bathroom counter stopped looking helpful and started looking smug. It didn't help that suburban life was built on a certain kind of denial. You didn't talk about unpleasant things. Your house was perfect, your marriage was fine, and your kids definitely weren't lighting things on fire in the woods behind school. But the Tylenol scare broke through that cultural force field with surgical precision. You couldn't exactly pretend this wasn't happening when people were dropping dead after doing the most relatable thing in the world, taking something for a headache and going about their day. Halloween, the most sacred suburban holiday after the 4th of July, felt it first. Trick-or-treating suddenly became a tactical operation. Parents walked the route like Secret Service agents. Candy was inspected, which usually meant nervously poking it with a butter knife and then declaring it probably fine. There were whispers about skipping Halloween altogether, but that was like canceling Christmas. Instead, the suburbs did what they did best: adapted. While pretending not to panic, you could feel the tension in the air behind the tidy lawns, and autumn wreaths was a creeping sense of dread. The plastic masks couldn't hide it. The decorated porches looked festive, but now every candy bar handed out came with an invisible question mark. Suburbia didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like a movie set where someone had switched out the props for explosives and still people tried to carry on. The sprinklers ran on timers, the garage doors opened like clockwork, and neighbors still waved, but with slightly tighter smiles. You held your kids' hands a little longer. You checked the seals on your grocery items. Furthermore, you watched each other more closely because now, somewhere out there, someone had used trust as a weapon. And if they could get to Tylenol, what else could they get to? Suburbia, once the poster child for security and sameness, became the front line of the great American paranoia boom, not with sirens or chaos, but with a quiet, creeping suspicion that maybe the perfect life wasn't as airtight as it looked from the curb. It started quietly, as all real-life horror stories do. Someone takes a cup of Tylenol expecting nothing more than relief. Within hours, a family's life is upended and nobody suspects that something as harmless as a red and white capsule could unleash chaos. You're a 12-year-old kid in the suburbs of Chicago. It's September 1982. The TV is playing reruns of MASH Times. In the background, your mom is making dinner in a sun-faded apron and your dad is fiddling with the garage door opener like it's the pinnacle of modern technology. Everything feels normal, painfully, beautifully, boringly normal. Then someone gets a headache, not unusual: your aunt, your sister, your neighbor. Headaches are like allergies and hangnails, unremarkable, constant, and solved with whatever's in the medicine cabinet. So they reach for the bottle. Tylenol, of course. Why not? It's not heroin, it's not mysterious, it's basically vitamin ibuprofen. You've probably swallowed one after faking a fever to skip gym class. And then they die at first. Nobody connects the dots. Why would they? It doesn't make sense. People don't just keel over after taking Tylenol. That's like blaming your toaster for an earthquake. So they investigate everything else: food poisoning, allergic reactions, spontaneous organ betrayal, anything but the little bottle on the bathroom shelf. The first confirmed victim is 12-year-old Mary Kellerman. She wakes up feeling sick, takes a Tylenol, and by breakfast she's gone, just gone. The kind of horror no parent is ever prepared for. It's like the universe suddenly decided to pull the rug out from under everyone and then lit the rug on fire. The tragedy rocks her family, but it doesn't stop there. Within hours, another death, then another and another. Different families, different towns, same terrifying pattern: perfectly healthy people dropping dead after taking Tylenol, not because it was expired, not because they accidentally took 400 of them. Just one or two, that's it. It doesn't feel real. It feels like the plot of a very slow, very polite thriller, where nobody screams until Act 3. Panic doesn't arrive all at once. At first, it tiptoes in disguised as confusion. Doctors start to whisper, nurses give each other looks, medical examiners double check CK everything, triple check the toxicology, and then the chilling realization slaps everyone across the face: it's cyanide. Someone somewhere is putting cyanide in Tylenol capsules. You probably don't know much about cyanide beyond spy movies and vague chemistry class flashbacks. But here's the gist: it's fast, deadly, and has zero chill. A sprinkle the size of a nerd candy, can you? And now it's apparently sitting inside a bottle in your medicine cabinet, looking innocent as ever. The police scramble, the press starts circling, the FDA bursts into action with the urgency of a caffeine-fueled raccoon. Suddenly, every bottle of Tylenol in the greater Chicago area becomes a potential crime scene. You're not just checking expiration dates anymore, you're looking for signs of tampering like a paranoid squirrel during knot season. The strangest part, there's no pattern. The victims don't know each other. They didn't buy their Tylenol from the same store. It's random, terrifying and, worst of all, it's personal, because everyone has Tylenol. Everyone. It's like someone decided to lace the American dream with poison just to see what would happen. At this point, suburban kitchens transform into amateur crime labs. Parents dump pills onto plates and inspect them like jewelers, squinting for imperfections. The trash fills with bottles that just don't look right. You start to eye the medicine aisle at the grocery store like it's haunted and somewhere someone is still slipping poison into capsules, methodical, silent, invisible. The first Tylenol death wasn't just a tragedy. It was the crack in the dam, the moment the unthinkable became possible, a harbinger of the chaos to come. Because if a 12-year-old girl could die from taking something her mom gave her for a sore throat, what else wasn't safe? In the space of a single morning, a familiar comfort turned into a loaded weapon, and the country would never look at a medicine bottle or Halloween candy. Or sealed anything. The same way again. There's no Twitter, no Nextdoor app, just word of mouth and the 6 o'clock news. But when news breaks that people are dying after taking Tylenol, information and panic spreads faster than you can say. Childproof cap. You're in your living room sipping a tab and watching Wheel of Fortune when the anchor cuts in with a special report. At first, it's confusing, a series of mysterious deaths in the Chicago area. You perk up linked to cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules. You sit up straighter. Wait, Tylenol, like the bottle currently hanging out in your kitchen drawer, the one your kid took this morning for her growing pains. That Tylenol. Suddenly, your stomach drops faster than your rotary phone can hit the receiver. This is 1982, remember. Panic doesn't travel by tweet or text. It travels by neighbors leaning over fences, by hushed phone calls on landlines that click every time someone picks up another extension, by that frantic tone your mom gets when she's talking to your aunt and thinks you're not listening, and, most of all, by television. The 6 o'clock news becomes the nation's anxiety delivery system. The graphics are blocky, the music is dramatic, and the anchors are wearing suits large enough to double as tents, but the message is clear: Tylenol is being tampered with. People are dying and authorities have no idea who's doing it or how to stop it. Within hours, a ripple of unease transforms into a tidal wave. Grocery stores start pulling Tylenol from their shelves, not because anyone told them to, but because no one wants to be known as the store where Brenda got her murder capsules. Pharmacies follow suit, and suddenly suburban kitchens across the country become staging grounds for emergency family meetings. Your mom's holding the Tylenol bottle like it's a hand grenade. She's not sure if she should throw it away, lock it in the freezer, or bury it in the backyard. Your dad starts making calls. One friend says the news is overblown. Another insists it's already in their town. A third claims they heard the police are testing aspirin next. So better not risk that either. And because there's no internet, misinformation spreads the old-fashioned way, rapidly, confidently, and with no citations. Someone's cousin swears they saw a man in a trench coat slipping something into bottles at the Walgreens. Someone else insists they read in a newsletter that Al-Qaeda, who doesn't exist yet, might be involved. One woman tells the entire PDA that Tylenol is secretly owned by Russia. It's the analog version of going viral. By the next morning, people are hoarding alternative painkillers like they're prepping for the apocalypse. Bottles of Advil, Bayer, and whatever expired middle is still hiding behind the coffee filters are now precious commodities. Your mom won't let you take Flint's Tons chewable without giving them a full visual inspection and tapping them against the table like a suspicious melon. Meanwhile, authorities are scrambling to keep up. The FBI issues statements, the FDA gets involved, Johnson & Johnson begins recalling millions of bottles. It's the first time many Americans hear the word tampering used outside a football game. Suddenly everyone's paying close attention to seals, caps and whether the foil on top has been compromised. At school your teacher tries to keep things calm, but even she has a weird look in her eye. The nurse locks up the medicine cabinet. Kids start whispering rumors in the lunchroom. One swears they heard a kid's tongue turned green from poisoned Tylenol. Another says the pills are being mailed to random families with no return address. It's like watching a mass hysteria unfold, one sentence at a time. Even grocery stores get in on. The panic signs pop up overnight. No Tylenol on premises. Customers start checking every bottle they buy, for anything, mouthwash, cough syrup, salad dressing. If it has a cap, it gets the shake and sniff treatment. At this point your parents don't trust anything that doesn't come shrink, wrapped, foil, sealed and motorized by week's end. You're living in a totally different reality. You're not sure what's real, what's rumor and what's just. Your neighbor Carol being dramatic again. But one thing's for sure, in the pre-social media world, panic still knew how to spread. It didn't need hashtags or viral videos, just a scary headline, a little water cooler conversations and the terrifying realization that something you trusted completely could suddenly turn on you, and in true suburban fashion. The only thing spreading faster than fear was gossip. Halloween is right around the corner and suddenly every piece of candy looks like a potential murder weapon. Police issue warnings, parents consider canceling trick-or-treating, and somewhere a child weeps softly into a pile of confiscated Tootsie Rolls. You wake up one October morning ready to plan your costume, only to find your mom staring at the news like it's a horror movie, except the monster is a mini Snickers. Tylenol is still the talk of the town and now it's morphing into a larger, stickier fear. Candy, not just bad candy, not just off-brand taffy that pulls your fillings out one by one. No, we're talking all candy, all of it. Poisoned, tampered, weaponized sugar. The headlines do their part. Could candy be next tampering? Fears grow ahead of Halloween. This year's trick may be deadly. It's as if the nation collectively forgot that candy was ever meant to be fun. Suddenly, every sweet is a suspect. Reese's too soft, could be injected. Jawbreakers, hard to test, too risky. Pixie Sticks basically powdered cyanide, if you squint hard enough and read too many tabloids. Police departments start issuing official Halloween advisories like it's DEFCON 3. You'd think a war was about to break out on the sidewalks. Some towns even float the idea of canceling Halloween entirely, because nothing says keeping kids safe like eliminating their favorite holiday and replacing it with an evening of quiet, sugar-free despair. Moms everywhere assemble into spontaneous anti-candy militias. They research safety protocols like they're prepping for a Mars mission. Your mom is boiling a pot of water, not for dinner, for sterilizing candy wrappers. She's inspecting each treat under a reading lamp armed with rubber gloves and the kind of flashlight normally used by wildlife biologists. One package of Sweethearts looks slightly puffier than the rest and is immediately declared suspicious. And of course, some well-meaning neighbor starts passing out safety flyers. You find one in your mailbox titled 10 Ways Halloween Candy Could Kill You and 7 Things You Can Do About It. None of the solutions involve candy. Most of them involve apples which you are still not going to eat, no matter how lovingly they've been shrink-wrapped. You beg your parents to let you go trick-or-treating anyway. You promise not to eat anything unwrapped. Furthermore, you even offer to let them take the first bite of every candy bar, like a royal food taster. But your dad's already decided to buy you a safe treat bag from the grocery store which is just a depressing grab bag of boring candy you hate. And granola bars. Nothing says Happy Halloween like individually sealed sadness. Meanwhile, some neighborhoods try to salvage the holiday with alternative trick-or-treating options. Malls open their doors for costumed kids to shuffle from store to store like tiny sugar-deprived zombies. Church basement host harvest festivals which are just Halloween, with the fun surgically removed. And schools try their best, offering candy under fluorescent lighting with a stern lecture about stranger danger. But it's not the same. You walk past houses decorated with skeletons and fake cobwebs, but the streets are eerily quiet. Porch lights stay off, pumpkins sit unlit and sad. The scariest thing you see all night is a dad angrily explaining to his kid that tampered milk duds are no joke. Somewhere, a single child in a ghost costume walks down the sidewalk dragging a half-empty bucket, while their mom shines a flashlight on every crack in the pavement, like they're about to enter Area 51. And yet, despite the fear, some brave souls venture out. They take to the streets with costumes and courage, trusting in their neighbors and the sanctity of individually wrapped confections. They laugh, they trade candy and, yes, some of them even eat it. Gasp, because underneath all the hysteria, the panic, the confiscations and neighborhood watch patrols, Halloween refuses to die. It limps forward wounded, hyper-paranoid, maybe carrying a flashlight and wearing reflective tape, but alive still. The fear leaves a mark. From this point on, Halloween is never just Halloween again. It's risk assessment. In a Spider-Man costume it's fun, but now with a parental advisory sticker. It's candy, but candy you feel a little weird about, and so the great American tradition of joyfully panicking over things that were fine a week ago lives on. You turn on the television to escape the real world, but all you get is wall-to-wall coverage of the Tylenol murders. Anchors, doctors and government officials take turns freaking out the nation, one special report at a time. This is 1982, the golden age of mass media-induced heart palpitations. No social media, no TikTok, hot takes. No podcasts calmly explaining things over lo-fi beats, just you, your couch and a 500B television set broadcasting doom in full analog glory. The screen glows, the anchors look vaguely sweaty, and the chyron reads something like, "Poison pills could your family be next," in capital letters so large. It feels like they're yelling directly at your cereal. You flip through the channels hoping to land on something soothing, Little House on the Prairie, maybe The Love Boat, but every station is in full fear mode. It's the Tylenol murders all the time. Local stations try to keep up with national news by slapping together Man on the Street, interviews featuring people who clearly just wanted to buy paper towels and now have a microphone shoved in their face. Yeah, I don't trust medicine anymore. I'm switching to herbal tea and vibes. Each network tries to outdo the others. CBS shows a slow-motion dramatization of someone opening a Tylenol bottle, complete with a thunderclap sound effect. NBC gets a toxicologist to hold up a cyanide vial like it's Exhibit A in a murder trial. ABC not to be outdone brings in a panel of experts who all agree that, yes, you might already be dead. The anchors themselves are a perfect cocktail of gravitas and alarm. Dan Rather's eyebrows do more heavy lifting than most fitness instructors. They speak slowly, clearly, and with just enough vague menace to ensure that viewers will never sleep again tonight. What's in your medicine cabinet might be plotting against you. News segments start blurring the line between information and anxiety performance art. You've got grainy B-roll of suburbanites getting raided for Tylenol, close-up shots of anonymous hands examining pill bottles like they're defusing bombs, and eerie music that wouldn't be out of place in a Cold War spy film. Some stations even simulate what might happen if your Tylenol was tampered with, complete with dramatic reenactment starring what appears to be the channel's unpaid interns, and let's not forget the commercials. In between, you'll watch a terrifying 10-minute expose on cyanide and then, without warning, be hit with a toothpaste ad featuring a woman smiling like she's never worried about anything in her life. It's emotional whiplash. You go from "we're all going to die" to "this new Crest flavor has extra sparkle" somewhere along the way. Talk shows get in on the action. Daytime hosts, usually known for recipes and celebrity gossip, suddenly start inviting chemists and criminologists to sit between the woman with the world's largest zucchini and a guy promoting his new book on dream interpretation. It's chaos, but comforting in that 80s way, like knowing your dad owns 3 identical plaid shirts and wears them in rotation. Even the weatherman starts feeling ominous chance of rain on Thursday, and he keep an eye on your cold medicine folks. You laugh, but then you stop laughing because, honestly, yeah, and through it all, the message is clear: you are not safe, but you can keep watching to learn how to pretend you are. The Tylenol murders weren't just a tragedy, they were. TV gold networks turned real fear into the world's most uncomfortable miniseries. Ratings went up, trust went down, people started looking sideways at their neighbors, their pharmacists, even their mail, and you, a simple human with a mild headache, began wondering if you'd rather just live with the pain. Eventually, authorities and companies would respond with new safety measures, new seals and new reasons to squint suspiciously at anything shrink-wrapped. But for a little while, the scariest thing in America wasn't the poison. It was the glowing box in your living room calmly telling you to stay tuned because the next capsule you take might be your last. And now here's a commercial for cough drops. Within weeks, America develops a new obsession: safety seals. Every bottle box, and even your peanut butter soon comes, armored in plastic foil and enough security features to make Fort Knox blush. You go to open a bottle of aspirin, and suddenly you're solving a mechanical puzzle designed by a paranoid wizard. First there's the outer plastic wrap, then a glued-on cardboard top, then a foil seal, under that, a cotton ball dense enough to insulate a small cabin. You finally get to the pills and feel like Indiana Jones retrieving a sacred artifact, except with more child-resistant caps and less rolling boulders. Before the Tylenol murders, nobody really thought about packaging. You bought your medicine, popped it open and called it a day. If the bottle wasn't sealed, you didn't blink. You trusted that what was inside was safe. After all, it came from a store with bright lights and pastel tile floors. How could evil happen in a Walgreens? But suddenly trust wasn't enough. The murders flipped a switch in the national psyche. Now everyone looked at packaging with the scrutiny of a crime scene investigator. Safety became the new marketing gold. Tamper-resistant labels started popping up on everything like an arms race of domestic paranoia. If your product didn't come with a triple-layer barrier, a biohazard lock and the approval of at least 2 government agencies, people weren't buying it. You're at the grocery store watching a lady shake every bottle on the shelf like she's trying to find the one with the fewest demons inside. The manager is replacing shelf stock in real time. Somewhere, a new hire at the Tylenol factory is being trained how to attach foil seals with the delicacy of a bomb tech. Johnson & Johnson, desperate to win back consumer trust, leads the charge. They develop tamper-evident packaging as if their future depends on it. Because it does. This includes glued flaps, shrink bands, sealed caps and boxes so reinforced you could drop them off a building, and they'd bounce. Pharmaceutical packaging becomes a masterclass in over-engineering. Suddenly, getting into a bottle of pills is harder than getting into college. And it doesn't stop with medicine. You open a jar of peanut butter. There's a vacuum-sealed foil lid that peels back with a hiss so satisfying it might as well say, "Congratulations, you're safe now." Condiments join the movement. Even yogurt gets a protective barrier. The entire nation is now shrink-wrapped for your protection. Somewhere in Ohio a father opens a can of Pringles and mutters they could have gotten to these 2 before calmly placing them in the quarantine cabinet next to the Pop-Tarts. Even toy packaging gets in on the action. You go to unwrap a Barbie, and she's secured with enough wire and tape to survive re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. No one is taking chances anymore, not even with plastic fashion dolls. All of this adds minutes, sometimes hours, to your daily routine. Opening a bottle of ibuprofen becomes a cardio workout. By 1983, the average American adult has developed grip strength rivaling professional rock climbers. Children under the age of 12 stop being able to access anything without adult supervision, which was kind of the point, but also means more yelling from the bathroom when someone needs cough syrup, and yes, there are people who complain. It didn't used to be like this, says your grandpa while stabbing a jar of pickles with a butter knife. Back in my day, we didn't need foil seals, we just trusted things not to be poison, but trust like your childhood belief in sugar without consequences is gone now, replaced by plastic foil and the unspoken agreement that maybe this is a little excessive, but we're not taking any chances. You probably slept through chemistry, but tonight let's learn about cyanide. The villain of our story turns out this stuff is way more effective than any horror movie monster, and with a little sprinkle it made headlines from coast to coast. Let's start with the basics. Cyanide isn't just one chemical. It's a whole family of extremely unfriendly compounds. There's hydrogen cyanide, a gas, potassium cyanide and sodium cyanide, both solids. All of them have one thing in common: they interrupt your body's ability to use oxygen. That's right. You can be surrounded by air, lungs doing their job, and your cells still suffocate. It's like trying to drink from a glass of water while someone glues your mouth shut. At the molecular level, cyanide is a bit of a party crasher. It binds to the iron in your cell's mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, and blocks oxygen from being processed. It's like someone cutting the power in a high-rise apartment building during a heat wave. The lights go out, the AC stops, everything melts down, except, instead of your kitchen going dark, your heart and brain stop working fast. Symptoms hit quickly. Within seconds to minutes, victims can experience dizziness, headache, confusion, nausea, and ultimately loss of consciousness. If enough cyanide is present, death can occur in less than 5 minutes. That's faster than most people can even spell cyanide. And to make things worse, it doesn't take much. Just a few hundred mg, about the weight of a paperclip, that's it. A sprinkle, barely enough to dust a donut. And yes, it's been used before. Cyanide has a long, grim resume. It's popped up in everything from Nazi gas chambers to Cold War spy kits. It's been the go-to chemical for political assassins, war crimes, and deeply unsettling murder plots. In small doses it's terrifyingly effective. In large doses it's overkill, literally. It's also used in mining and industrial processes, because when you're trying to extract gold from ore or clean your metal, you apparently want something just shy of demonic. But in 1982, most Americans had no idea what cyanide really was. It sounded like a makeup villain from a comic book, something Batman might face after dinner. The idea that it was real and that someone had introduced it into over-the-counter Tylenol was beyond chilling. It wasn't just the act of poisoning, it was the type of poison. This wasn't some subtle, slow, working hard to detect chemical. It was loud, brutal, instant, like setting a bear trap inside your vitamin bottle. What made the Tylenol murders especially unnerving was that the capsules were tampered with after production. Someone, likely a local, bought bottles off store shelves, opened the capsules, added cyanide powder and then revealed them with unholy precision before putting them back on the shelf. No high-tech lab, no fancy setup, just evil creativity and access to one of the deadliest chemicals on the planet. The autopsies confirmed it. Victims had collapsed almost instantly. Investigators were horrified by how little cyanide was needed and how quickly it worked. One coroner compared it to being struck by lightning, but inside your body it was fast, untraceable at the moment, and by the time you realized what had happened, it was already over. The response from scientists and forensic experts was a mix of dread and admiration. Cyanide was efficient, and that made it all the more terrifying. You couldn't taste it in a pill. You couldn't smell it unless it was in gas form, and even then it just vaguely resembles almonds. Assuming you're one of the lucky 60% of humans genetically able to detect that scent, so how do you test for it? With special chemical reagents, gas chromatography and advanced toxicology methods, none of which are available in your kitchen. Which means for the average person, in 1982, there was only one real method of detection: paralyzing fear. Police are everywhere, suspects are nowhere, and every neighbor seems a little more suspicious than usual. The Tylenol case turns ordinary people into armchair detectives armed with suspicion and a healthy mistrust of anyone who owns a trench coat. You live in a peaceful suburb where the most scandalous thing last week was someone mowing their lawn at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. But now the neighborhood group chat okay. The analog version, otherwise known as yelling over the fence, is buzzing with wild theories and slightly unhinged speculation. Every day brings a new suspect. I heard Carol's husband works at a lab. Someone whispers Bob hasn't been the same since the 4th of July barbecue. Another offers as if potato salad betrayal leads to cyanide expertise. The police, oh, they're trying, but this isn't a typical murder case. There's no crime scene. No witnesses, no angry ex-lover who accidentally left their fingerprints on a candlestick. The killer didn't stab, shoot or strangle. They used chemistry, and not even the fun high school kind where you accidentally made slime. This was cold, calculated and terrifyingly silent. So investigators are stuck chasing shadows. They search store shelves, check supply chains and interview every pharmacist within a 30 m radius. They test everything: the Tylenol, the bottles, the store stockrooms, even the factory batches. But the pills were tampered with after they left the production line, which means the suspect could be anyone: a random shopper, a bored teenager, a disgruntled employee. Or, worst of all, your neighbor, who always keeps their blinds drawn and composts too aggressively. Enter the American public suddenly and spectacularly unqualified to help you: your parents, your entire block. You're now unofficial investigators. You've watched enough Columbo to feel confident, and it shows. You start giving your mailman side eye. Your dad says things like, "You know, Steve down the street has been acting odd lately," as though that's probable cause. Your aunt refuses to buy anything in a bottle unless she hears it hiss open. Personally, people start making lists, actual physical lists, of who they think could be behind it. It's not helpful, but it's cathartic. Some guy in the next town over got arrested for entirely unrelated reasons and half the county nods sagely declaring, "Called it." And then there's the media. Circus news reports start profiling types of poisoners. They're almost always described as male, mid-30s, intelligent, socially withdrawn and somehow both unassuming and suspicious. Congratulations, you've just described your uncle, your science teacher and half the IT department at your office. At the same time, amateur sleuths are diving deep into toxicology books. They clearly don't understand. Someone in your neighborhood book club has a theory involving jet fuel, microchips, and a revenge plot tied to the price of beef. It doesn't make sense, but it feels convincing when she says it with enough conviction and a turtleneck. And of course there's the trench coat. Innocent people are now being judged solely on their outerwear. If you walk into a pharmacy wearing anything darker than taupe, expect to be followed. The paranoia is fully weaponized. Meanwhile, real detectives are drowning in tips. Thousands of leads come in, most of them deeply unhelpful. One man claims he saw a squirrel acting suspiciously near a drugstore. Another reports that his neighbor's dog has the look of someone who knows too much. Some people just call to say they don't trust anyone who enjoys decaf. Eventually, the FBI releases a sketchy profile of a possible suspect. It's so vague it could be almost anyone: mid-20s to 50s, quiet, intelligent, possibly male, probably human. Somewhere an entire subset of America nervously removes their glasses and pretends to be more extroverted than usual. Hospitals roll out candy X-rays, neighborhood watch groups treat Halloween like a military operation. Kids trick or treat in daylight, parents walk in packs and not a single piece of candy escapes the great parental inspection. Welcome to post-Tylenol Halloween, where paranoia is the new costume and every Tootsie Pop is a potential IED. The crisp fall air is still there, the leaves still crunch under your sneakers and porch pumpkins still flicker with tiny flames. But now every parent on the block has the cautious body language of someone disarming a bomb, except the bomb is a bag of Skittles. You're 8 years old, dressed as a robot made from a cardboard box and glitter glue. Normally this is your night to roam, free, sugar-fueled and half-blinded by your costume, but this year you're flanked by adults with flashlights, a whistle and an emergency plan. Your mom is wearing a windbreaker, like she's leading a search and rescue mission. Your dad has already inspected your first piece of candy by holding it up to the moonlight like a rare gemstone. Before you even left the house, there was a safety briefing: don't eat anything until we've checked it. Only accept sealed candy. Avoid the Johnsons. They give out homemade popcorn balls, and we don't trust anyone who makes their own caramel. You nod solemnly. It feels serious. You start to wonder if maybe the candy is too delicious. Could that be a trap? The hospitals, yes, actual hospitals offer free candy X-rays. That's right. You can walk into the ER and say, "Please scan this, Snickers," and someone will genuinely help you. Radiology departments are now swamped with Smarties and candy corn, as if childhood joy has to pass through airport security. The same machine used to detect broken bones is now looking for sewing needles in peanut butter cups. And guess what? People go in droves. Parents line up with their pillowcases full of loot, exchanging nervous smiles and pretending this is all just another quirky suburban tradition. Remember last year? We just ate the candy. Huh, what fools we were. One mom swears she heard of a kid whose candy bar had wires inside. Nobody can verify that, of course, but the rumor spreads faster than a flu outbreak in a kindergarten. The local neighborhood watch, previously a sleepy group of dads who occasionally pointed flashlights at raccoons, has gone full tactical. They've got maps, walkie-talkies, and matching windbreakers. Some are wearing reflective vests. Others are patrolling in pairs, scanning dark driveways with military precision. Halloween has been upgraded to a coordinated event complete with strategic routes, candy checkpoints and suspiciously serious clipboards. Some parents suggest holding Halloween during daylight hours. This year, the idea of trick-or-treating while the sun's still out is controversial on one hand, visibility on the other. It ruins the entire spooky aesthetic. Kids dressed like vampires just don't hit the same in broad daylight next to someone mowing their lawn. Still, some towns make the switch. The result, a Halloween that feels less Night of the Living Dead and more Afternoon of the Lightly Concerned. Once home, the great parental inspection begins. You dump your candy haul onto the living room rug like you're smuggling jewels. Your mom brings out a butter knife and slices open anything suspicious. She's poking chocolate bars like she expects a tiny puff of gas to escape. Your dad cross-references candies with his mental list of things that might be fatal. You try to sneak a piece. You are promptly scolded. Every candy gets inspected, sorted and, in some cases, quarantined. This one looks tampered with, that one's from a house I don't recognize. This one's got weird packaging. Translation: say goodbye to half your loot. The discarded pile sits on the counter untouched, but never thrown away, as if your parents are still unsure whether it's cursed or just suspiciously crumbly. And somehow, amidst all this, kids still manage to have fun. The costumes are on, the candy bags are full, even if partially confiscated, and the magic of Halloween, though a little dented, still flickers like a slightly nervous jack-o'-lantern. Because even when the world gets weird, even when hospitals are scanning your starbursts for explosives, the tradition holds. The night goes on. Needle in the apple, razor blade in the Snickers, the Tylenol panic supercharges every urban legend. Your uncle ever whispered soon. Even the most innocent snack is under suspicion. You're sitting at the dinner table picking at a suspiciously healthy plate of green beans when your uncle leans over and mutters, "You know, I heard a kid bit into a caramel apple and bled out from a sewing needle inside." You pause mid-chew. Your mom rolls her eyes. Your dad says it was probably a thumbtack, but it's too late. The story has taken root. Now the apple in your lunchbox feels like it might be a booby trap. This was the magic of 1982. The rise of a new genre, suburban horror, brought to you by gossip, anxiety, and the local AM radio station. The Tylenol murders didn't just scare people, they lit a match under every creepy story that had ever lurked in the corners of middle-class memory. Suddenly, everyone had heard something about someone who knew, a guy whose niece nearly died from poisoned Halloween candy. The great irony, most of these urban legends predated the Tylenol panic. The myth of the razor blade in the apple had been floating around since the 1960s. But those were whispers. Rumors printed in the back of Reader's Digest passed around schoolyards like forbidden spells. It wasn't until the Tylenol murders that these stories were supercharged with national credibility. If someone could poison medicine, why couldn't they weaponize a baby Ruth? So now everyone's sharing horror stories. Your neighbor swears he found glass in a Kit Kat. A kid from your sister's class supposedly swallowed a push-pin hidden in a Twizzle. One lady claims her cousin's roommate's dog died from a poisoned milk dud. And honestly, that last one is tragic, even without the poison. The problem, none of these stories are verified. But facts don't matter. When fear has momentum, the media starts reporting concerns which quickly turn into warnings which inevitably become confirmed cases. According to someone's aunt, a whole new sub-industry is born, the Halloween safety myth. It spreads faster than lice at a sleepover. You might think, but surely no one would actually put a razor blade in an apple, and you'd be correct. But logic is no match for the human imagination, especially when backed by a national murder scare. So out come the myths, the candy laced with LSD, the gum injected with heroin, the pixie stick that turned a child's tongue green, which scientifically, is just a sign you've eaten too many blue raspberry things. But try telling that to a mom who just saw a Dine special titled Killer Candy Is Your Child Next? Local officials don't help. Some cities issue full-page warnings in newspapers. Others hold community meetings about candy best practices like it's a boardroom PowerPoint. Even the police join the fun, giving interviews with headlines like "Trick or Treat with Caution, What's Hiding in Your Candy?" As if kids weren't already suspicious of that. One neighbor handing out pennies. The result, pure chaos. Trick-or-treat night becomes a cross between a scavenger hunt and a forensic investigation. You go door to door dressed as a pirate, but your mom checks every Snickers bar like she's about to file a court case. Homemade treats are banned. Unlabeled goodies are tossed without mercy. Your best friend's entire haul gets confiscated because one wrapper looked too easy to open. The legend spiral gets worse every year. By 1985, people are genuinely inspecting fruit for sewing needles, as if there's a black market syndicate dedicated to sabotaging Granny Smiths. One dentist offers to X-ray candy in exchange for children turning in their sweets, a clever public health scam disguised as generosity. Somewhere, the actual dentist from Little Shop of Horrors is applauding. And so the myths endure. Because even as the Tylenol panic fades, the stories stay. They're passed from babysitters to younger siblings, from school assemblies to PTA meetings. They become part of the cultural background, noise, part warning, part entertainment, the suburban version of ghost stories, except these involve bubble gum and government safety advisories. To this day there are people who swear they knew someone who found a needle in a banana, taffy, but ask them for proof, and suddenly it's my cousins, friends, co-workers' mailman. The legend is eternal, ever-changing and totally unverifiable. Suddenly every household is a mini Fort Knox. Safety latches, locks, and those little plastic outlet covers make their way into American homes, and nobody is quite sure how any of them work. It starts subtly. A few parents buy cabinet locks just in case. A few others swap out their pill bottles for new ones with caps so tightly sealed they require a secret handshake to open. But within months the entire country has transformed into a living museum of awkwardly installed safety mechanisms. It's the dawn of childproofing, and it is absolutely overcorrecting. You remember the old days when opening a bottle of aspirin required nothing but a twist and maybe a slight grunt. Now it's a multi-step ritual involving pressing down, turning counterclockwise and muttering ancient Latin curses. You hand the bottle to your dad, he hands it to your mom. She tries using a butter knife. Somewhere in the background, your grandma just shakes her head and says, "Back in my day we didn't lock up our cough drops like nuclear weapons." The Tylenol murders didn't just change how we saw medicine, they rewired the entire national psyche. Suddenly, everything is suspect and, more importantly, everything needs a plastic cover. The government steps in. Regulations are introduced mandating tamper-resistant packaging and childproof caps for medications. Pharmacies start handing out pamphlets about poison control. The phrase "keep out of reach of children" becomes the unofficial motto of 1983. Toy manufacturers, furniture stores and home goods brands pivot into full safety gear mode. Your house slowly transforms into a padded obstacle course. The kitchen cabinets now have those bendy latches that require you to contort your wrist into a shape only accomplished by yoga instructors and pickpockets. The bathroom drawers won't open unless you press a secret button hidden somewhere near the back. The medicine cabinet is padlocked, the fridge has a magnetic lock, even the trash can has a lid that clicks shut like it's guarding classified documents. And then there are the outlet covers. Oh, the outlet covers. Tiny plastic shields meant to prevent curious toddlers from sticking forks into places where forks were never meant to go. You never saw anyone actually get electrocuted before 1982, but now you'd think every wall socket was a mini death trap. They come in multi-packs. They don't quite fit right, and they make plugging in the toaster feel like solving a Rubik's Cube. Blindfolded parents start hoarding baby gates, like they're planning to secure a perimeter. Every doorway becomes a checkpoint. Stairwells are barricaded. Sharp corners on coffee tables are fitted with squishy bumpers that look suspiciously like pool noodles in disguise. Even the dog food bowl gets moved to a higher shelf, just in case no one's exactly sure where the line is anymore. Are coat hangers a hazard? What about the drawer with the Ziploc bags? Can a child choke on a spatula? Every item in the house is now evaluated for risk, from the television remote to the decorative seashell your aunt brought back from Florida. The whole thing takes on a weird kind of momentum. Once you start childproofing, you can't stop. It's like Pringles, but with paranoia. One dad down the street installs a lock on the laundry machine. A mom across town zip ties her toilet lid shut. A couple in New Jersey claims they've childproofed their mailbox, which sounds less like parenting and more like a cry for help. And through all of this, children are fine, mostly unbothered, mildly confused that the kitchen now operates like a high-security vault. They adapt faster than the adults do. You watch a toddler dismantle a safety latch with the ease of a safe cracker, while three grown adults stare on in horror, realizing their entire protection system can be undone by a 4-year-old with sticky fingers and a juice box. But here's the thing. No one's furious about the inconvenience. Sure, it's frustrating. Sure, your dad's blood pressure goes up every time he can't open a bottle of Tylenol. But in the wake of something as terrifying as product tampering, the inconvenience feels like a fair trade. Childproofing becomes more than just a safety trend. It becomes a cultural shift, a way for parents to feel like they've regained control in a world that suddenly felt fragile and unpredictable. A symbol of caution, care and maybe just a little bit of collective overreaction. Johnson & Johnson faces the PR disaster of the century. Their executives become media darlings, issuing tearful apologies and recalling everything that isn't nailed down. Somewhere a publicist earns a bonus and a few gray hairs. It starts with a press conference. A somber executive in a gray suit steps up to the mic looking like he's aged 15 years. In the last 15 minutes we're devastated, he says, voice shaking slightly. Safety is our top priority. And for once in corporate history, people believe him, because the company isn't just putting out a statement. They're pulling every bottle of Tylenol off shelves nationwide, not just the ones from the affected batches, all of them. Let's be clear, this is unheard of. In 1980, two mass product recalls weren't exactly standard procedure. Most corporations, when faced with disaster, issued vague statements, blamed external factors and hoped the media got distracted by something shiny. But Johnson & Johnson doesn't do that. Instead, they throw themselves into the fire arms wide open wallets. Even wider, they recall over 31 million bottles of Tylenol. That's not a typo, 31 million. The financial cost, over $100 in the 1980s, money adjusted for inflation. That's enough to buy a small island, build a modest theme park or bribe a mid-sized European government. But they don't flinch. They send employees to help remove products from shelves. They run full-page ads urging people not to consume Tylenol. Furthermore, they set up hotlines, so consumers can ask questions, voice fears, or just cry into the receiver while holding their medicine cabinet at arm's length. Behind the scenes, Johnson & Johnson is in full panic mode. There are emergency meetings, crisis teams, and a PR strategy held together with sheer caffeine and desperation. Somewhere in a corner office, a publicist is white, knuckling a mug of lukewarm coffee and whispering, "Just don't say the word cyanide again," to a junior executive who's about to go on Good Morning America. But oddly enough, it works. Against all odds, Johnson & Johnson earns praise for its transparency and swiftness. The public sees their actions not as defensive but responsible. Instead of hiding behind bureaucracy or legal jargon, the company takes ownership. They admit what they don't know, promise to find answers and back up their words with action. Even the media, usually a predator in the wild corporate jungle, takes a more measured tone. Anchors describe the recall as historic, decisive, and the right thing to do. You know you're doing damage control right, when even the Wall Street Journal sounds a little impressed. And while the recall is the headline, it's just the beginning. In the months that follow, Johnson & Johnson goes into full reinvention mode. They introduce tamper-evident packaging, triple-sealed foil wrapped and shrink, banded within an inch of its molecular structure. They create a new standard for how over-the-counter medicine should be packaged. Basically, if it doesn't require 3 tools, 2 hands, and a small prayer to open, it's not making it onto shelves. Furthermore, they also run a soft rebranding campaign, reminding people that Tylenol has been a household name for decades, that it helped with fevers, headaches, and toothaches long before it became national news, and, slowly, cautiously, Americans start to believe again, not all at once, but enough. Within a year, Tylenol's market share begins to recover, not just recover, bounce back. By the late 80s. It's once again one of the most trusted names in pain relief in the corporate world. This is less a comeback and more a resurrection, like if Blockbuster suddenly overtook Netflix or if MySpace ran a successful IPO. Crisis communication classes in business schools still teach the Tylenol response as a gold standard, not because it was perfect, but because it was human, emotional, transparent. The company leaned into the fear rather than away from it. They spoke clearly, acted fast, and, most importantly, didn't try to spin, and somewhere in a crowded boardroom a publicist who hasn't slept in 3 weeks finally takes a breath, straightens their tie and realizes they may have just pulled off the impossible, making a multinational pharmaceutical company seem relatable. For many kids, Halloween 1982 is the one that got away. Cancelled parties, empty sidewalks, and the quiet despair of eating carrot sticks in the living room. It's the only time in history when a dentist's house was actually popular. You wake up on October 31st, costume ready, candy dreams alive. You've spent weeks planning this. Maybe you're going as a vampire, maybe a cowboy, maybe a Garfield in a poorly ventilated polyester nightmare, doesn't matter. Tonight was supposed to be yours. Instead, your mom is standing at the kitchen table holding the morning newspaper like it's a death certificate for fun. The headline screams something like, "Is Halloween too dangerous for your child?" and that's it. Your trick-or-treating privileges gone, vanished, ghosted like a bad first date. She's already picked out a healthy alternative activity, which apparently involves carrot sticks, educational games, and quietly crying into a bowl of raisins. Outside, the neighborhood is a ghost town, only without the ghosts. The porch lights stay off, the jack-lanterns are unlit, some families put up handwritten "no candy" signs taped to the door, as if that will ward off both burglars and bad vibes, and the sidewalks empty. Not a single kid in sight. You could roll a full-size pumpkin down the street and hit nothing but your own disappointment. The PTA tried to save it. Bless their earnest hearts. Your school sent home a flyer suggesting a safe, fun indoor alternative Halloween celebration. So now you're dressed as a cowboy, indoors sitting in the gymnasium under harsh fluorescent lights, sipping watered-down apple juice while a cassette tape plays Monster Mash at a volume that makes your ears ring. Instead of candy you get a prize bag filled with raisins, stickers, and a pencil shaped like a skeleton. One kid gets a box of raisins and a lecture about sugar. He starts to cry. The parents clap meanwhile. Some neighborhoods push trick-or-treating early, like daylight hours early. So now there's a 4:00 p.m. start time. Nothing quite says Halloween like collecting candy in the blazing sun while wearing a Darth Vader mask that fogs up faster than your grandma's windshield. In January you knock on a door and get a single saltine cracker in a Ziploc. The lady says, "Better safe than sorry," with the wide-eyed smile of someone who's just deep cleaned her entire spice rack out of sheer anxiety. Other families choose to stay in entirely. They watch TV specials. They bob for apples in the kitchen. Furthermore, they try to make popcorn balls together, which just turns into a sticky ball of regret. The family next door has a safe treats basket filled with packaged raisins, sugar-free gum, and an unsettling number of dental floss packets. The dentist down the street gives out toothbrushes, and for once, no one eggs his house. That's how weird things have gotten. It's the only Halloween in living memory where being healthy feels like the actual goal. And for the kids who did go out, their night looked like a military operation: full parental escort, flashlights, reflective tape, timed routes. "We're hitting the safe houses only," your mom says, as if you're storming Normandy instead of asking for a Milky Way. And before you even get to try a single piece, your candy is inspected with the intensity of a TSA agent, checking suspicious luggage, anything homemade trashed, anything unwrapped, banned, anything with a Ward-looking font on the wrapper declared contraband. Later you sit on the carpet staring at your haul. Your parents have quarantined the Butterfingers, they're too soft. The Jolly Rancher's sharp edges. Someone confiscates your caramel apple like it's radioactive. You're left with two twins, one unopened Smarties pack and a piece of gum shaped like Frankenstein. It tastes like chalk and regret. And yet, even in the disappointment, there's something strangely memorable about it all: the absurdity, the overreactions, the empty streets and tense parents and safety-themed school parties. It becomes the Halloween everyone talks about. For decades, the year everything went sideways. The Halloween that wasn't. Forget CSI. You're the crime lab. Now parents develop elaborate, totally unscientific tests for dangerous candy, cutting, squeezing, sniffing, and the classic parental tax, eating the best pieces themselves just to be safe. Your living room is now a forensic laboratory. You and your siblings sit in a semicircle on the floor staring at your candy haul like it's evidence in a high-profile case. Your mom stands over it with a butter knife. Your dad's got a flashlight for some reason. Nobody knows what they're looking for, but by God they are going to look. First, the visual inspection. Candy is held up to the light like a $100 bill under suspicion. "This one's got a wrinkle in the wrapper," your mom says, squinting like she's about to discover a hidden treasure map. The offending Reese's is placed in the maybe pile, also known as candy purgatory. Next comes the squeeze test. Your dad picks up a Tootsie Roll and gives it a firm pinch like he's checking for ripeness. Feels too soft, he mutters, into the reject pile. It goes. A Snickers bar gets the same treatment. Odd shape, he says. You glance over it. Looks like a Snickers bar. But apparently your dad's new side hustle is candy geometrics. Then comes the cutting. Every chocolate bar is sliced in half like it's being prepped for a chocolate autopsy. The knife goes in slow, dramatic, like the opening credits of a 1980s crime thriller. You half expect to hear a narrator whisper, "It was a quiet night in suburbia until someone found a sewing needle in a Kit Kat." Meanwhile, your mom is sniffing things like aggressively. She opens a dew, inhales deeply and pauses like she's trying to identify the scent of cyanide behind the artificial grape. "This one smells off," she says ominously. You politely inform her, "That's just what grape-flavored things smell like." She's unconvinced. It goes in the trash. Gum gets unwrapped and stretched. Caramels are pulled apart to check for hidden metal. Lollipops are held up and spun under the ceiling light. One kid in your class swears his dad ran his whole candy bag through a metal detector borrowed from a friend who used to work at the airport. Someone else says their uncle used a beer counter. That sounds fake, but you're too tired to argue. And then, of course, there's the taste test. This is the most ancient, powerful and completely self-serving of all safety checks, also known as the parental tax. "Let me try that Butterfingers," your dad says, just to be sure. You look on in horror as he takes a large, confident bite. "Nope, this one's fine," he declares around a mouthful of peanut brittle and stolen dreams. Your mom, not to be outdone, calls dibs on the Twix. "You can't be too careful," she says, chewing slowly and with an almost suspicious level of enjoyment. This is repeated for all the high-risk candies, Kit Kats, M and Mid Snickers, Reese's Cups, the heavy hitters. Meanwhile, you are left with 2 packs of stale Smarties, 3 bananas-flavored Taffy Taffies and a loose peppermint of questionable origin. It's not just your parents either. DIY candy testing has become a national pastime. School newsletters include candy safety checklists. Radio hosts run segments where parents call in with their homebrew safety tips. One guy recommends soaking candy in hot water to see if anything weird floats to the surface. Another lady microwaves her child's candy for 5 seconds to neutralize toxins. These people are not scientists. They are scared and, honestly, kind of having fun. Months after the murders, nobody trusts anything. Bottled water is suspicious. Grandma's fruit cake gets side-eyed. You find yourself examining tick tags for tampering, because you never know. It's the kind of fear that doesn't just fade, it lingers like a weird smell in the fridge. You've already survived the media frenzy, the Halloween that wasn't, and the childproofing revolution. But something's still stuck in your brain. It whispers things like, "What if someone poisoned the grape jelly?" or "Is this Capri unsealed enough?" You're not alone. Across America the national mood is jittery. Supermarkets feel like potential crime scenes. People start inspecting items that were once considered untouchable: bottled drinks, gum, shampoo, even soup cans. You watch your neighbor gently shake a can of peas before buying it, like it's going to confess its crimes. Under pressure, a man in front of you at the drugstore opens a box of tissues to make sure they're real. Everyone's just a little on edge. Even the most innocent food items start to feel sinister. Those iconic rolls of breath, mints with the click lids. Suddenly they look like tiny death traps. What if someone injected them with something? You hear someone whisper at a bus stop and for a split second you wonder if they might be onto something. And then you remember they're talking about tick tags. Welcome to 1983, where micro mints are a legitimate source of anxiety. School lunchrooms aren't immune. Kids trade snacks with the caution of Cold War diplomats. "This twinkle's unopened," says one fourth grader, "but the edges feel weird." Another kid refuses a Capri Sun unless he personally stabs the straw in first so no one can tamper with it. Someone's mom packs all their snacks in vacuum-sealed Tupperware with their initials scrolled in sharp, like they're worried a rogue pudding cup might stage an attack. And it's not just about food anymore. Trust in everything takes a nosedive. You go to the store and inspect your deodorant, wondering if it's been opened. You pick up a bottle of shampoo and twist the cap just to be sure it still clicks. At one point someone starts a rumor that soda bottles are being tampered with. So now your dad won't drink anything that doesn't hiss like a rattlesnake when opened. Even grandma's fruitcake, the most indestructible object known to humankind, isn't safe. You stare at it suspiciously, fork hovering midair, wondering if the candied cherries are hiding something darker. Never mind that no one's ever finished a slice of fruit cake in recorded history this year. It might actually kill you. Probably not, but maybe. And let's talk about bottled water. Previously this was the most innocent object on the planet, but now you're inspecting the cap seal like a chemist in a spy movie. If the ring under the lid looks even slightly askew, it goes straight into the trash. You're not taking chances, not with hydration. The thing is, no one really thinks they're in danger, but also no one's totally sure they're not. It's a uniquely 80s blend of casual paranoia and polite anxiety. People still smile at the checkout counter, they still host dinner parties, but they also now include disclaimers about the food. This cake is store-bought, sealed until 5 minutes ago, please enjoy. Eventually the government tries to reassure everyone. There are public service announcements, reports saying the danger is over. Tylenol is back on shelves, but the seed has been planted. Once you've lived through a real-life horror story involving painkillers and packaging, it's hard to unrig that Bell Trust has a longer recovery time than market share. So you go about your life, you still buy candy, you still take medicine, but a little part of you always pauses. You give the bottle a shake, you give the packaging a second look. You don't expect trouble, but you check just in case, because the Tylenol panic didn't just end with headlines. It settled into people's routines, a soft, ever-present hum of maybe quietly influencing how you unwrap your snacks and scan your shopping cart. The FBI pulls out all the stops, surveillance profiles and more dead-end leads than an Agatha Christie novel, but the person responsible still at large somewhere out there. Possibly working in product design. It begins with a frenzy. This is the FBI's worst kind of mystery, no ransom note, no motive, no known victims beyond the unlucky everyday people who just happen to take a pill at the wrong time. There's no suspect and no pattern, just cyanide-laced Tylenol and a trail of fear that stretches across Illinois and into every medicine cabinet in America. Agents descend on Chicago like a cloud of trench coats and briefcases. They interview pharmacists, store clerks, warehouse workers and delivery drivers. Everyone's a potential witness or a suspect. One poor guy gets grilled for 30 minutes just because he has a chemistry degree and doesn't like aspirin. If you so much as looked like you understood molecules, you are fair game. They start building a profile. It's not exactly comforting. The theoretical culprit is described as intelligent, meticulous and likely male, which is unhelpfully the same profile as most mid-level accountants and every substitute chemistry teacher in the country. They narrow it down to someone who could have had access to the medicine after it left the factory, which is somehow both specific and maddeningly broad. In the absence of good leads, the FBI does what any red-blooded American agency would do, they publish a hotline and hope for the best. Thousands of calls pour in, some useful most not. A guy in Detroit insists his neighbor is the poisoner because he walks weird and owns a lot of jars. A woman in Kansas is sure it's her ex-husband because he once said medicine was a scam. A 12-year-old boy claims his school principal has bad vibes. The agents politely nod and take notes. They will never, ever follow up on forensics. Teams pore over the tampered capsules, studying them with microscopes and tweezers like tiny crime scenes. They determined that the capsules were opened, filled with cyanide and revealed with almost surgical precision. No fingerprints, no DNA, just a chilling level of care. It wasn't messy or rushed. It was done by someone calm, patient and deeply terrifying. One name that keeps popping up is James W. Lewis, a man with a history of fraud and a flair for sketchy behavior. He even sends a letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding $1 million to make the killing stop. That's not subtle. He gets arrested, but for extortion, not murder. There's no evidence he ever touched the bottles, let alone tampered with them. He remains the prime suspect in public imagination but never gets convicted for the poisonings. The FBI keeps the case open and open and open. Decades pass, agents retire, files get boxed up and sent to storage. Every few years someone dusts them off. Runs. A few new tests with updated tech and nothing. No new leads, no breakthroughs. Just the same lingering question, who did it? Theories abound. Was it a lone wolf? A disgruntled employee, a random thriller? Some speculate it was a test run for something bigger, though thankfully nothing ever came next. Others think it was someone with a grudge against Johnson & Johnson, or just humanity in general. The motive remains as elusive as the suspect. And then there's the haunting possibility. No one likes to say out loud that the person responsible might have been someone completely ordinary, someone who never got caught, never tried again, and now lives a perfectly boring life, maybe designing packaging or teaching science or helping companies come up with tamper-proof containers. That's the part that sticks with you, that someone caused all this chaos, all this fear with no name, no face, and no justice, the ultimate ghost in the machine, a phantom with a handful of cyanide and a terrifying grasp of logistics. Future Halloweens are changed forever. Gone are the days of unchecked candy trading and mystery popcorn balls. In their place, organized parties, sealed treats and a generation with trust issues. You used to roam the neighborhood in a flimsy plastic mask with 2 nostril holes and a dream, no flashlight, no map, no adult in sight. Just you, a pack of sugar-hungry friends and the vague understanding that if you made it back by 9:00 p.m. you wouldn't get grounded. You traded candy freely on the curb, swapping a full-size Butterfingers for a Charleston Chew, like tiny Wall Street brokers in face paint. But now Halloween comes with laminated safety guides and designated safe zones. The first casualty is spontaneity. Kids no longer trick or treat freely. Instead, they attend events with titles like Harvest Safety, Carnival or Community Costume Festival. No outside candy allowed. These are held at churches, schools and sometimes a particularly ambitious strip mall. There's a raffle, there's face painting, there's usually a guy making balloon animals who clearly didn't sign up for this level of chaos. Candy. Once the Wild West of childly bartering becomes a tightly regulated economy, everything must be prepackaged, individually sealed and ideally labeled by a recognizable brand. Homemade treats banned. Ziploc baggies filled with M&Mid, suspicious hand-decorated cookies from your sweet neighbor down the block straight into the trash. The rule is simple, if it looks like someone could have tampered with it, it gets confiscated. No questions, no tears, no appeals. Parents now hover like Secret Service agents. One walks 10 paces ahead with a flashlight, scanning the sidewalks for hazards, another lingers at the back of the group, double-checking the addresses of participating houses like. They're running a tactical op. Trick-or-treating becomes a single-file operation with designated chaperones and mandatory reflective vests. Even the costumes start to change. Gone are the masks that limit your breathing and field of vision, too risky. In come the safety-friendly costumes with glow-in-the-dark trim, breathable mesh and optional ID tags. One kid shows up dressed as a high-visibility construction worker and everyone applauds his practicality. You long for the days when you could be a bloody zombie without getting a pamphlet from a concerned parent. By the late 80s, some towns try trunk or treat events where kids collect candy from the backs of decorated cars parked in well-lit lots. It's festive, it's supervised, it's slightly dystopian. You walk from one Subaru to another, pretending it's the same as knocking on doors, while your dad makes small talk with someone's orthodontist over cider in a solo cup. The ritual of candy inspection becomes its own mini-holiday. You come home, dump your haul onto the carpet and watch your parents perform a full audit. They poke, prod, sniff, slice and possibly run a few pieces under the hot tap just to be sure. The phrase, "let me check that," first becomes a guaranteed way for an adult to claim your best chocolate under the guise of safety. As a result, the post-Tylenol generation grows up with a subtle but permanent twitch. You trust brands, packaging, tamper seals. You side-eye anything wrapped in wax paper. Furthermore, you say things like, "better safe than sorry," while slicing open a candy bar with surgical precision. Furthermore, you carry that mindset into adulthood, hesitating slightly before opening anything that's already been opened, even a bag of chips your friend swears he just opened, like 2 minutes ago. The Tylenol murders birth a new era of helicopter parenting. Playgrounds get safer, food gets blander and stranger. Danger becomes the national motto. Before 1982, parenting was, let's say, handoff. Kids rode bikes without helmets, played unsupervised in drainage ditches and drank water straight from the garden hose like feral raccoons. Your parents weren't neglectful, they were just busy doing adult things like smoking indoors and ignoring OSHA. But after the Tylenol murders, oh no, that carefree parenting era screeched to a halt faster than a kid discovering a Brussels sprout in their Halloween candy. Suddenly, danger wasn't just lurking in dark alleys, it was hiding in your medicine cabinet, your lunchbox and possibly your Capri Sundae. If a child could die from something as innocent as a Tylenol, then nothing was safe. And so began the great overcorrection of 1982. Playgrounds, once thrilling landscapes of metal and concrete, got a tame, full makeover. Gone were the towering jungle gyms with exposed bolts and questionable rust. In came plastic playlets with rounded edges and rubber flooring soft enough to nap on. The merry-go-round, aka the centrifugal child launcher, was quietly retired, the seesaw was replaced with interactive balance devices and the monkey bars lowered, padded and eventually replaced with ropes that led nowhere. School lunches became a bland parade of safety. Peanut butter became controversial. Homemade anything was banned. Every lunchbox had to be labeled, sealed, and packed in a cooler bag like it was heading on an international flight. You couldn't trade snacks anymore. What if your fruit roll-up had foreign bacteria? Food in general went through a nervous breakdown. Packaged snacks now came with tamper evidence seals, expiration dates in 48-point font and cautionary labels like may contain traces of nuts, soy, and existential dread. Parents began to fear anything not factory sealed. One kid brought a muffin from home and was treated like a hazmat threat. Another brought grapes and was asked, "Did you wash these?" But the biggest shift, the rise of the helicopter. Parents now hovered constantly. School drop-offs became dramatic rituals involving checklists, hugs, double hugs, emergency contact, reviews and reminders to never talk to strangers, even if that stranger is offering something fun. Like candy or a job in television. Playmates were no longer spontaneous. They were scheduled, background checked, and monitored by at least one parent who sat nearby pretending to read Better Homes and Gardens, while secretly watching everyone like a hawk. And speaking of strangers. Oh boy, stranger danger became the dominant fear of the decade. Forget monsters under the bed, now the real threat was anyone your parents hadn't personally known for 20 years. Schools brought in police officers to teach kids how to scream, run and, if necessary, karate, chop their way to safety. You were told never to accept candy rides or even compliments from a stranger. Your world got smaller, more padded, more supervised. Kids started wearing ID bracelets, some wore whistle necklaces. One company even made shoe tags with emergency numbers. It was like preparing for a toddler-themed episode of Survivor and, honestly, some kids liked it. There was a certain prestige in having your very own laminated safety card. Nothing says independence like being pre-approved for a minor panic attack. Even leisure activities weren't safe. Pool parties required lifeguards and a roster of certified flotation devices. Sledding hills were cordoned off. Roller skating involved knee pads, wrist guards, and a helmet thick enough to survive a space launch. One family refused to let their child attend a birthday party because they weren't confident in the trampoline's bounce ratio. It sounds absurd now, but at the time it felt necessary. People had been blindsided. A product they trusted turned deadly, and it shattered their sense of control. So they clung to what they could control: safety measures, routines, checklists, and laminated everything. And from those anxious, well-meaning reactions came a whole new style of parenting, a generation of kids raised with love, caution, and the faint suspicion that literally anything could be dangerous, including their own lunch. No major event is complete without conspiracy theories. Soon, radio hosts, neighbors, and your Aunt Linda all have their own theories about who did it and why it starts slow. A few weird letters to the editor, a guy on late-night AM radio connecting dots that don't exist. A neighbor who says, "You know, I always thought something was fishy about Tylenol, but by the end of the week it's full-blown tinfoil bonanza." Welcome to 1982, where national tragedy meets unfiltered imagination and every uncle suddenly becomes an investigative journalist. Talk shows are the epicenter. Before Reddit, before YouTube rabbit holes, before podcasts hosted by guys named Ace with questionable soundproofing, there were late-night TV hosts and radio personalities with too much airtime and not enough oversight. You flip on the TV after 11 p.m. and hear a man say, "Now, I'm not saying aliens did it, but I am saying the capsules were shaped suspiciously like UFOs." Coast to coast. AM becomes gospel. You know, the type gravel-voiced hosts who sound like they've been awake for 36 hours and just know something big is being covered up. They take anonymous calls from people who can't say where they work but have seen things. One guy claims the poisonings were a test run for mind control. Another is convinced the whole thing was engineered by Big Aspirin to discredit acetaminophen. You can't prove they're wrong, but that's the beauty of a good conspiracy. In kitchens and barber shops across America, theories multiply. Aunt Linda says it was definitely the government. They wanted to scare us into taking fewer pills, she says while stirring coffee and refusing to elaborate. Your neighbor insists it was a foreign spy testing how fast the US would react to an internal threat. One kid on the playground swears his cousin knows a guy whose friend's dad saw a shady figure dropping pills into a bottle behind a CVS. This CVS does not exist. There's something comforting about it in a weird way. If the poisonings were a master plan, then maybe it wasn't just meaningless evil. Maybe there's a reason, a villain, an answer, and humans love answers, even if they're completely made up. Soon, tabloids get involved. Headlines scream things like Tylenol, terrorists still at large. And is it in your bottle? Complete with zoomed-in photos of pills that somehow look guilty. Grocery stores see a run on herbal remedies. One guy starts selling essential oils out of a van, another opens a vitamin shop with the slogan, "Nature doesn't kill you, farmer does." There are whispers about copycats, about cover-ups, about secret files the FBI doesn't want you to see. One best-selling book claims to reveal the truth, but mostly just rehashes news clippings with spooky font, daytime talk shows, book panels of experts, conspiracy buffs, and occasionally a psychic. She holds a Tylenol bottle and announces, "I feel betrayal." The audience gasps. Even comedians get in on the act. Late-night monologues include lines like, "Remember when your biggest worry was choking on a peanut M&M," or, "At this point, I trust gas station sushi more than over-the-counter meds." It's dark humor, sure, but also the only way some people process the weirdness. And then there's the strangest theory of all: maybe no one will ever be caught. That idea settles in like a chill. If the person who did this could vanish into the background unnoticed, untraceable, what else could they do? What other parts of everyday life could suddenly become unsafe for a certain segment of the population? That question becomes obsession. In time, the theories evolve, some die out, others find new life online decades later, rebranded as deep dives or true crime content. But the seed planted in 1982 still grows in the minds of the paranoid, the curious and the very bored. Because nothing fuels a good conspiracy like a mystery with no ending, and nothing fuels a late-night host like a country full of people who suddenly trust nobody. Against all odds, Tylenol comes back stronger, safer, and now with more seals than a marine park. You start to trust it again, cautiously. It's a comeback story worthy of a daytime soap opera. Just months after becoming the most feared bottle in America, more terrifying than anything with a skull and crossbones label, Tylenol is staging a full redemption arc. Johnson & Johnson goes into public relations overdrive, flooding the earwaxes with apologies, safety promises and commercials that feel like they were written by your most guilt-ridden friend. After accidentally spoiling a surprise party. Step 1: New packaging. Gone are the loose lead bottles of the early. The new Tylenol comes armed, like it's prepping for war. You've got foil seals, shrink-wrapped necks, cotton plugs, warning labels and a cap that requires a minor engineering degree to open. Taking a single pill becomes a multi-step ritual involving tools, light aerobic stretching and possibly calling your dad. And Americans notice. At first the triple-sealed bottles feel like overkill. You hear grumbles. Do I really need to go through airport security just to open some Tylenol? But secretly it feels good, comforting, like locking your doors and installing a moat. The branding also gets a glow up. Tylenol isn't just fast relief anymore, it's trusted fast relief. The word safety is printed on everything short of the pills themselves. Commercials show happy, healthy families smiling at their tamper-proof bottles, as if the packaging just told a funny joke. The music is soft, the message is clear. We get it, we messed up, but we fixed it. Please love us again. And America slowly does, sales recover, trust rebuilds. By the mid-80s Tylenol is back on top. It becomes the go-to painkiller again, not just because it works, but because it now feels like the pharmaceutical equivalent of a heavily fortified bunker. You look at a bottle of aspirin and think, it seems flimsy. But Tylenol? Tylenol looks like it's been pre-screened by the FBI and kissed by angels. It helps that Johnson & Johnson doesn't pretend it never happened. They lean in. They hold up their response as a model of corporate responsibility. Business schools praise them, crisis management experts quote them, and other companies take note. Suddenly, tamper evident, everything is the standard, not just medicine, juice bottles, ketchup, even some peanut butter jars get the fortress treatment. All thanks to Tylenol's very public disaster and even more public recovery. But the redemption arc isn't just about seals and caps. It's emotional, psychological. You personally start to come around. You open your new Tylenol bottle. Furthermore, you see the seals, feel the resistance of the safety cap, hear the crinkle of the foil as you peel it back. There's no sinister chill in the air, just the mundane, comforting struggle of trying to get relief for your headache without launching cotton across the room. And while you're still cautious, still doing a quick glance at the pills to make sure they look normal, you're not afraid anymore, not really. The ghost of 1982 lingers, sure, but it's fading, wrapped in layers of plastic foam and hard-earned trust. You may never forget the panic, but you start to believe in safety again, in standards, in companies actually learning something for once. So yes, the Tylenol bottle now has more security features than a Las Vegas casino. But that's not the punchline. The punchline is, it worked. Tylenol came back. It's still in your cabinet and, if you're being honest, you kind of like the new cap. The Tylenol murders left a permanent scar on the American psyche, and on Halloween, even decades later, the shadow of tampering haunts every autumn. You wouldn't think a handful of pills could change how an entire generation thought about trust, safety, and trick-or-treating. But here we are. It's been years, decades, since 1982. And yet every fall, like clockwork, the echoes return, subtle but unmistakable, a nervous energy in grocery store aisles, a double check of every wrapper, a quiet inherited caution passed down like an heirloom. The original panic may have faded, but the cultural memory lingers like an unwanted raisin in a mini box of trail mix. People who were kids during the Tylenol panic grew up to become parents who watched Halloween like it was a heist in progress. Every candy wrapper was suspect, every unwrapped treat immediately trashed. Apples were never trusted again. Not that they were ever welcome in a trick-or-treat bag to begin with, but now they might as well be laced with dynamite and the rituals stuck. You can still find parents on October 31st sitting at the kitchen table sorting candy under LED lighting like amateur forensic techs. The phrase, "let me check that first," is still muttered every Halloween night across the country by people who were too young to remember the Tylenol murders but were raised by those who never forgot. It's muscle memory, now cultural reflex, a tradition rooted not in joy but in survival. Packaging, too, still carries the fingerprint of that moment. Every bottle of medicine, every safety seal, every triple-layered cap is a direct descendant of 1982. And while most people no longer actively fear tampering, the presence of those seals quietly reassures us. It's why you get annoyed when a bottle doesn't click or crinkle or require minor surgery to open, because deep down we equate resistance with protection. If it's hard to open, it must be safe. But the fallout isn't just physical, it's psychological. After Tylenol, Americans developed what some psychologists refer to as ambient anxiety. It's not fear in the traditional sense, it's not screaming or running or panic in the streets. It's more like a constant hum, a readiness to be suspicious, the idea that safety is an illusion and anything could be dangerous if you don't look closely enough. Furthermore, it bled into other areas too. We started locking things more, watching things more, teaching our kids caution first, curiosity second. And it wasn't just Halloween, birthday parties, school lunches, even Easter baskets got a little more sanitized, individually wrapped became shorthand for worthy of trust, and the media never forgot. Every few years, especially in October, some network repairs a special on the Tylenol murders. There's always new packaging, technology or a flashback to the Halloween that changed everything. For the briefest moment, it all feels fresh again. People share their stories. You'll hear someone say, "My mom never let us eat our candy until it was checked," or "We never got homemade treats again after that." Or even just "I still can't open a bottle of pills without thinking about it." That's the legacy, not the panic, not even the fear, but the adjustment, the shift in how we trust. Every Halloween, every safety seal, every cautious glance at a medicine bottle is a quiet memorial to 1982. No monument, no plaque, just habits, behavior, the little things we do. Because of the 1 year things got weird. And for all the improvements, better packaging, smarter safety protocols, faster recalls, the truth is we never really went back. We just got better at living with the shadow. So the next time you open a Tylenol bottle and struggle with the seal, or inspect your kid's candy like it owes you money, take a moment. That's the long-term fallout. Still with us, still sealed, still shaping Halloween, one wrapper at a time. You try to relive the glory days of Halloween, but things just aren't the same. Maybe it's the cellophane wrappers, maybe it's adulthood, or maybe it's the lingering sense that innocence doesn't come shrink-wrapped anymore. There was a time when Halloween was chaos in the best possible way. Kids roamed unsupervised, wrapped in capes made of pillowcases and optimism. You knocked on strange doors, got handed homemade popcorn balls from a lady in a witch hat and thought nothing of it. Some houses handed out full candy bars, some gave coins, and at least one guy handed out bookmarks. For reasons no one ever understood. It was weird, a little grimy and full of magic. But now Halloween feels curated, controlled. You walk into a big box store in September, and it's already been packaged, pre-approved and priced for mass consumption. Candy is individually wrapped within an inch of its life. You go to a Halloween party and see bowls filled with Fun's candy that's been double-bagged like it's radioactive. No one gives out popcorn balls anymore. No one even knows what they were. The fear that once gripped the country, the one born in 1982 with poisoned Tylenol and whispers of razor-laced candy, never fully left it. Evolved. It settled into the bones of Halloween like a ghost that won't move on. Parents still do the candy inspections, even if they don't really believe they'll find anything. There's a ritual to it. Now dump the bag, sort the loot, check the seals. Wonder aloud if Skittles were always this hard. Eat the Twix yourself, for safety. Even the costumes changed. What was once a homemade Frankenstein stitched together with duct tape and hope is now a $59 polyester jumpsuit from Target with flame retardant written on the tag. You miss the messiness, the effort, the slight danger that your ghost costume might burst into flames if you walk too close to a jack-lantern. And then there's the vibe shift. Back then, Halloween was a kid's holiday, the kind where adults were barely involved unless they were handing out candy or putting on a scary mask to terrify the neighbor's toddler. Now it's a lifestyle, Instagram-worthy decorations matching family costumes, boo baskets. What are boohoo baskets? You still don't know, but you've given 3 and received none. Somewhere along the way Halloween got clean. But despite all this, despite the shrink wrap, the seals, the trunk or treats held in church parking lots under floodlights, you still go out, you still buy candy, you still carve a pumpkin because, even if it isn't what it used to be, you want it to be. You want to recreate that flicker of magic from the days before we distrusted everything. You see it in the kids. They don't remember 1982. They don't know about cyanide or candy scares or news anchors grimly warning about licorice laced with doom. Furthermore, they just want to be Spider-Man or a witch or a dinosaur with a tail that knocks things off shelves. Furthermore, they don't check wrappers, they just rip and devour. Their joy is unsealed, uninspected and completely authentic. And maybe that's what's left of the old Halloween, the kids who don't know to be afraid yet. So no, Halloween didn't fully recover. It adapted, it got safer, smaller and a little sadder, but it didn't disappear. It just grew up with the rest of us. And every year, as October 31st rolls around, we try again. We light the pumpkins, we hand out the candy, we walk the sidewalks, half listening for laughter and hoping the magic comes back, if only for a few hours. Because deep down, we all miss the Halloween that didn't come with a warning label, and maybe, just maybe, we still believe it could come back, wrapped in nostalgia, covered in chocolate and totally unsafe in the best possible way. So why do we keep coming back to this story year after year? Maybe it's because it's the perfect blend of nostalgia, cautionary tale, and the deep need to believe we can keep our kids safe, even when we're mostly just winging it. Every Halloween it resurfaces somewhere between the pumpkin spice and the skeleton lawn ornaments. Someone brings it up, remember the Tylenol thing? They'll say, usually while unwrapping a Snickers with surgical precision. It's said with a tone that's half spooky campfire story, half mom who's been through it, and everyone nods knowingly, even if they weren't alive when it happened. Because by now it's more than news, it's folklore. It lives in urban legends, in candy inspection rituals, in vague warnings about not eating anything that looks off. It's whispered in parent groups, referenced on Halloween safety posters and embedded in our cultural muscle memory like a ghost story we all agreed to take seriously. Furthermore, it's part myth, part memory and part coping mechanism. We don't just tell it to scare each other, we tell it to feel like we're in control of the scary things. The Tylenol murders are that rare kind of true crime that doesn't just fascinate us, it changed us. Unlike other cases that become documentaries or podcast binges, this one affected something mundane, something intimate, not just crime scenes and shady motel, but the little red and white capsule in your medicine cabinet, the one you trusted, the one you gave your kid for a fever. That's why we remember, and that's why we keep telling it, because it made us reevaluate the illusion of safety in our everyday lives. It didn't target the reckless or the criminal. It targeted the careful, the sick, the innocent. Furthermore, it took the most ordinary act, taking a Tylenol for a headache, and turned it into a national trauma, a slow-motion horror show without a villain you could catch or a motive you could understand. And even after all the safety measures, all the seals, all the changes, it still left a mark. The story doesn't end neatly. There's no satisfying arrest, no court trial to binge-watch, just uncertainty, a mystery with a long shadow that's hard to let go of. But we also tell the story because we want to believe in our resilience, the way parents changed overnight, the way the public demanded action, the way a corporation shockingly did the right thing instead of going full deny and deflect. It's not just a story about fear. It's a story about how people responded to fear. Imperfectly, yes, but with purpose, with intention and, yeah, with a little overkill, okay, a lot of overkill. Nobody needs a candy X-ray machine, but still, in the end we tell the story because it helps us feel like we're doing something, like by remembering we're guarding against it ever happening again, like if we remind our kids not to eat open candy, or we check that safety seal one more time. We're part of the solution, even if it's mostly theater, even if it's mostly for us, because what else can you do, really? You can't prevent every bad thing, you can't pad every corner of the world, but you can tell the story, you can teach caution, you can make your kids wait 5 minutes while you go through their Halloween candy, like you're diffusing a chocolate-covered bomb, and maybe, just maybe, that gives you a little peace. So we pass it down, not to terrify but to prepare, not to punish Halloween, but to protect what's left of its magic. The Tylenol murders were terrifying, yes, but the story we tell about them, that's not about poison. Local officials and nervous parents organize candy buybacks, a sort of sugar amnesty program where kids can exchange their suspicious loot for cold hard cash or, if they're unlucky, a coupon for carrot sticks at the local health food store. Suddenly, every 6-year-old becomes an expert negotiator, demanding hazard pay for each unopened Reese's. It's the kind of idea only early 1980s America could produce. Take something children love, associate it with danger, and then introduce bureaucracy to clean up the emotional mess. The Great Candy Buyback was part public health initiative, part PR stunt, and part fever dream born out of pure weaponized suburban paranoia. But to the kids on the ground it was the closest they'd ever come to a candy-based stock market crash. It started innocently enough. A few well-meaning towns in the Midwest, always the Midwest, rolled out the idea as a way to promote safe choices. Flyers went out to parents: turn in your Halloween candy, receive a reward and rest easy. Sounds wholesome, almost noble. And then the chaos began. Kids showed up dragging pillowcases and plastic pumpkins filled with loot, eyeing local officials like sketchy porn shop owners. A Snickers were worth at least 50 cents, a full-size Hershey bar a crisp $1, but candy corn. You practically had to pay them to take it. One girl from Des Moines brought in a 3 lb sack of individually wrapped sour balls and asked for a pony. She did not receive one, but her ambition was noted. Suddenly, local gyms, dentist offices and even health food stores wanted in. Turn in your candy, get a gift card, donate your loot, win a raffle for a new bike. The motives varied. Some wanted to support healthier habits, others just didn't want their own kids bouncing off the walls for 3 days straight. Whatever the reason, the result was the same: Halloween became transactional. Some buyback locations offered toys in exchange for candy. This led to some tough decisions. You could either keep your contraband Kit Kats and risk your parents' disappointment, or trade them for a plastic spider ring and a bouncy ball. Kids debated this with the seriousness of Wall Street analysts. If I give up my Twix now, one child reasoned, I can invest in a super soaker by Christmas. But not everyone played fair. In households across America, siblings teamed up to maximize returns. One would gather candy from the neighborhood, the other would convince the parents it was dangerous. Together they'd bring it in, collect the payout and then hit up the discount aisle on November 1st for candy that, ironically, was now considered safe again because it was store-bought in bulk. Parents, meanwhile, loved the idea, at least on paper. It gave them a way to avoid being the bad guy. Sorry, honey, it's just not safe. But hey, here's $2 and a granola bar. Some leaned fully into it, designing elaborate point systems where Tootsie Rolls were worth 5 points and anything with nougat required a waiver. Others used it as a sneaky way to reclaim control over their kids' diet and reduce the annual sugar binge. Win-win. Of course, some kids weren't buying it, if the candy's so dangerous. One fourth grader reportedly said, "Why does the mayor want to collect it?" An excellent question which no adult wanted to answer. Conspiracy theories began to bubble. Was the government stockpiling sugar? Were dentists using the candy as bait to create new cavities? Were all the almond joys secretly recycled into airline snacks? The real answer, of course, was far simpler. Adults panicked, and when adults panic they tend to throw money at the problem, or in this case, gift cards and celery sticks. By the late 80s, the buyback program started to fizzle out, replaced by more subdued forms of parental control, candy sorting, stealthy confiscation and the time-honored parent tax. Where all Reese's mysteriously disappeared during inspection. With suburban streets officially deemed too dangerous, the 80s witness a bizarre migration. Trick-or-treating at the mall. You shuffle under fluorescent lights, hitting up Orange Julius for fun Skittles and watching Spider-Man pose for Polaroids in front of Radio Shack. Halloween has never felt more like a team-building exercise at an insurance company. Welcome to Trick or Treat. Light, the diet version of Halloween, same costumes, half the soul. It's the perfect solution for anxious parents, overwhelmed mall managers and corporations desperate for a reason to move inventory before the Christmas onslaught. Malls promise a safe, climate-controlled Halloween experience, which is code for no candy from strangers, no walking outside and zero chance of getting run over by someone dressed as Darth Vader on a BMX bike. It starts around 5 p.m. on Halloween night. You show up at the mall in costume, usually wearing a winter coat over it, because October in the 80s couldn't pick a temperature. Your cape is peeking out from your parka. Your plastic mask fogs up as soon as you walk through the automatic doors. You pass a sparrow and try not to trip over a toddler dressed as a crayon. The food court smells like ketchup and confusion. The stores get in on the act, sort of. Some go all out. Spencer's Gifts has a fog machine and a skeleton that screams when you walk by. Claire's hands out glittery stickers and exactly one Tootsie Pop. Other stores are less committed. JCPenney offers a firm handshake and a worth as Original K Jewelers gives out coupons for promise rings. One employee at Foot Locker tries to give out mint-flavored shoe inserts before getting written up. The entire experience feels like a cross between a scavenger hunt and a corporate trust fall. You line up at each store's door while an employee dressed as someone who hates their job drops a fun-sized candy into your branded plastic pumpkin. There's a map of participating stores, but half of them aren't actually participating, and the other half ran out of candy by 6:15. You spend more time dodging shopping carts than ghosts. There's usually some sort of entertainment, if you can call it that. Maybe a DJ playing Monster Mash on loop. Maybe a clown twisting balloon swords next to the ATM. Maybe a local weatherman judging the costume contest with dead eyes and a sponsored coffee cup. Your best hope for fun is the chance someone falls into the mall fountain, which thankfully happens more often than you'd think. And then there's the vibe outside. Halloween has mystery, mischief, the crisp air, the rustle of leaves and the dim thrill of knocking on an unknown door. Mall Halloween has linoleum floors, ceiling tiles and that faint smell of pretzels and janitorial lemon. You're not trick-or-treating, you're just walking past mannequins under fluorescent lights. It's as spooky as a tax seminar, but with more Hello Kitty bags. But here's the thing. It works. At least it technically works. The kids get candy, the parents get peace of mind, and no one gets a suspicious popcorn ball wrapped in a damp paper towel for a while. This is just how it goes. Entire childhoods take place under skylights and security cameras, chasing sweet rewards through a maze of Gap Kids and Sunglass Hut. Fashion is forever changed. Kids show up in costumes that are basically plastic tarps, while parents walk the neighborhood with flashlights, gloves, and a grim sense of purpose. Somewhere, a mom in a painter's mask invents the biohazard ninja. Look only to discover it's still less terrifying than a clown. Welcome to Halloween post-1982, where even Dracula isn't allowed out without a safety inspection. The panic from the Tylenol murders doesn't just rewrite the rules of candy, it gives Halloween fashion a full-blown identity crisis. Gone are the days of carefree bedsheet ghosts and hobbling together a robot costume from cardboard and dreams. Now everything has to pass through the filter of maximum caution, minimal airflow. Let's start with the kids. In the early 80s, store-bought Halloween costumes meant one thing: thin plastic suits that looked like garbage bags printed with questionable art, and a brittle, terrifying mask that attached with a rubber band designed to snap at the worst moment. These things were flammable, sweat-inducing, and about as breathable as a Ziploc bag, but kids loved them. Post-1982, however, something shifts. The costumes get even more sealed. Parents are suspicious of anything open or homemade, because who knows what someone could slip into a handmade princess dress. The safest option becomes wrapping your child in layers of plastic, Velcro, and paranoia. One kid goes as a jelly bean in a giant Ziploc bag filled with balloons. Another dresses as Plastic Wrap Man, which sounds fun until he starts overheating 2 blocks in. And then there's the rise of propless costumes. Anything with fake weapons is frowned upon now, too much chance for something to be hidden inside. Swords become foam noodles, wands are reduced to chopsticks, one child's lightsaber is replaced with a glow stick, and a lot of imagination. You haven't known heartbreak until you've seen a 5-year-old Jedi tries to fight Darth Vader with a flashlight from Radio Shack. But if the kids are cautious, the parents are next level. Moms and dads now patrol the sidewalks like neighborhood watch ninjas. They wear gloves because who knows what kind of fingerprints might be left on a tampered Snickers. Some have flashlights powerful enough to land a plane. Others bring walkie-talkies, laminated route maps, and emergency contact lists printed on dot matrix paper. One mom wears a full painter's mask and a poncho labeled Candy Patrol. Another hands out antiseptic wipes at every door just in case. And, of course, the rise of the fanny pack, a misunderstood but essential part of any suburban tactical kit. It's stocked with latex gloves, spare batteries, and at least one tube of newsprint. These are the Halloween commandos, the hazmat chaperones, the ninja moms, and yes, they're intense, but also deeply, hilariously human. They're doing their best with the information they have, trying to keep things magical while low-key expecting the apocalypse. Their battle cry is, "Just let me check that first." Their weapon of choice, a suspicious squint and a slightly overpowered flashlight. But even with all the over-preparation, the costumes still find ways to shine. A kid in headnote bubble wrap is both aesthetically bold and functionally safe. A group of kids goes as FDA inspectors, complete with clipboards and lab coats. One dad dresses as a trust issue, a cardboard box labeled, "Open at your own risk." Trick-or-treating may be more stressful, but the post-Halloween candy trade reaches new levels of sophistication. Kids gather in garages and basement for the annual candy exchange, where Smarties are the new gold standard and anyone offering unwrapped treats is immediately exiled from the table. This isn't a game. This is a free market in its purest, stickiest form, a financial system powered entirely by sugar, caffeine, and chaos. While adults upstairs sip cider and recount the Tylenol panic for the third year in a row downstairs, children are transforming a pile of colorful loot into an aggressive, high-stakes barter economy. It's like Wall Street. If Wall Street smelled like melted chocolate and boogers, everyone has their own currency system. Fun-size Snickers, strong, stable, always in demand. Pixie sticks, volatile, sky-high value early in the night, but they tank fast once someone realizes they're basically colorful dust in a straw. Candy corn, practically worthless unless you're dealing with a toddler who doesn't know any better. And then there's the foreign market. Things like caramel or whatchamacallit bars, exotic, confusing, and either worth everything or nothing, depending on who's at the table. The negotiations begin fast and ruthless. Kids lay out their stash like medieval merchants, everything sorted by category: chocolates, gummies, suckers, and the dreaded miscellaneous, which includes that one peanut chew from 1976 that somehow keeps circulating year after year. There's always a kid who brings a calculator, another with a ledger, and one future economist who's color-coded their inventory spreadsheet in a trapper-keeper. Rules emerge quickly. Rule number 1, no open wrappers. Doesn't matter if it was just a tear. If there's air inside the wrapper, it's radioactive. Toss it or trade it to your little brother. Rule number 2, no off-brand candy if the label just says candy bar in Comic Sans. Congratulations, you're holding either a granola bar or a lawsuit, it's automatically ineligible for trade. Rule number, no raisins. This isn't a health food swap, this is Halloween. There's no place for moral fiber here. Now comes the strategic trading phase. A Butterfingers can go for up to 3 drums and a Twizzle if you know the right buyer. Skittles are traded in handfuls, but M&Ms must be color verified for fairness. The chocolate-to-fruit ratio must be carefully maintained lest someone end up with a portfolio full of banana taffy, a literal junk bond. There's always one kid who hoards. Let's call him Jeremy. Jeremy shows up with an overflowing bag and refuses to trade until someone cracks and offers 5 Reese's for 1 Snickers. He's hated and respected in equal measure. Somewhere deep in his soul, Jeremy is preparing for a future in hedge funds. Then there's the charitable trader, the kid who gives away their almond joys because they just don't like coconut. This person is either a genuine angel or planning to ask you for a favor during recess tomorrow. Either way, you take the candy and don't ask questions. The energy in the room is electric. Snack-sized power brokers make rapid deals, whispering secrets, forming short-lived alliances and accusing each other of price gouging. Someone tries to introduce IUs. I'll give you a Kit Kat now, and you owe me a Twix at lunch. This goes poorly. Debt leads to betrayal, betrayal leads to war. Friendships are tested, but by the end of the night everyone walks away a little stickier and a little richer, either in chocolate or in valuable lessons about supply and demand. And the parents. From this moment on, every sealed snack comes with a shot of suspicion. Is your granola bar safe? Did someone mess with your juice box? Even opening a tube of toothpaste feels like a leap of faith. You never quite trust that little paper seal again, and breakfast is now a daily exercise in cautious optimism. After the Tylenol murders, America didn't just lose its sense of safety, it lost its packaging innocence. Before 1982, seals were something you found in aquariums and wax-stamped letters from mysterious uncles. But now every snack tube and bottle comes armored, like it's prepping for a cross-country flight in the overhead compartment of your least favorite airline. It starts in the medicine cabinet. You go to pop open a new bottle of pain reliever, and suddenly you're trapped in a multi-step puzzle box. First the outer plastic wrap, then the childproof cap, which only opens if you're pressing down, turning left and humming the national anthem inside a foil seal under. That a cotton ball, so tightly wedged it might have been installed by NASA. You start wondering if the headache is worth it. But the paranoia doesn't stop. With pills, snack time becomes a small-scale thriller. You reach for a pudding cup and stare at the foil lid like it personally insulted your family. Is it supposed to crinkle like that? Was that hiss normal? Should applesauce ever bubble? You find yourself squinting at expiration dates, comparing fonts on wrappers and giving Capri Suns the kind of shake you'd normally reserve for spray paint. Juice boxes, formerly innocent childhood fuel, now seem suspect. You remember the story someone's cousin's neighbor told about the one time they found a weird smell inside a high C. Is it true? No one knows. But you definitely sniff every straw before sipping, just in case. And don't get started on Jar's peanut butter. That pop, when you open it, becomes a live or die test. No, pop, throw it out. Too loud of a pop. Also, throw it out salsa. You tap the lid like a bomb technician before even turning it. If there's a single crumb under the seal, you're calling the manufacturer's hotline and maybe your local priest. Suddenly the kitchen is less heart of the home and more containment lab. You're not just eating. You're running a one-person FDA inspection. Furthermore, you take mental notes of what normal packaging looks like so you can detect subtle changes. If a corner of your granola bar wrapper is bent weird, it goes in the trash. You can't take chances. That's how they get you. And it's not just the food, lip balm, shampoo, even makeup starts to come with seals. You twist a cap and hesitate. Has this been opened before? Is the plastic broken? Are you about to apply danger directly to your lips? No one is spared. Trust has become a currency, and it's in short supply. The worst part, you start passing this anxiety on. You catch yourself giving suspicious glares to your kid's applesauce pouch. You hear yourself say, "Don't eat anything if the wrapper's already open," and realize you sound exactly like your own mom in 1983. The cycle continues. And so, as you settle into bed tonight, surrounded by pillows, blissfully free of tamper-evident seals and with no need to have your snacks x-rayed, let's take a quiet moment to appreciate just how weird, stressful and absurd history can be. Because somehow a handful of poison Tylenol capsules in 1982 managed to steal an entire country's sense of safety and, for one Halloween, turned every parent into a part-time detective. And every kid into a miniature conspiracy theorist in a plastic mask. Maybe you remember those days, the anxious glances at your trick-or-treat haul, the new sound of candy being dumped and inspected under the kitchen light, the feeling that every Snickers might be your last. Maybe you remember your parents lecturing you on never taking anything unwrapped, as if you were going to spend your adult life fending off tainted Vera's originals in the wild. But as you drift off, let's honor the resilience and stubborn hope of people who lived through it, the kids who trick or treated anyway, the parents who learned to read product recalls, and the communities that stuck together even when nobody knew what to trust. The Tylenol murders didn't just change how we see medicine and candy. They reminded us that even at our most anxious we're still creative, adaptable and sometimes hilariously overcautious. So tonight, as you tuck into your bed with nothing more dangerous than a slightly expired bottle of melatonin on the nightstand, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to the unsung heroes of Halloween, those who braved the cold, the crowds and, yes, even the panic, all for a little bit of sugar and a lot of stories to tell. History's weird people are resilient, and you, my friend, have survived another bedtime tale. Sleep tight and don't let the urban legends bite.